Not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme, but you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluttish time. When wasteful war shall statues overturn, and broils root out the work of masonry, nor Mars his sword, nor war's quick fire shall burn the living record of your memory. Against death and all oblivious enmity shall you pace forth. Your praise shall still find room even in the eyes of all posterity that wear this world out to the ending doom. So, till the judgment that yourself arise, you live in this and dwell in lovers' eyes. I was interested in this poem because of the grand comparisons made between various objects and the subject receiving the words of the poem. The sonnet is packed with emotional intensity, which is determined immediately in the first line. For context, a passionate woman is speaking to her deceased lover while he rests in his casket on the occasion of his burial, only days after his traumatic death. For substance, this poem is about how love and poetry can join forces to immortalize one's spirit. Now, as for structure, the structure of this poem is Shakespearean, which is 3 quatrains followed by a couplet, and Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter. And he also uses an AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG rhyme scheme. In the first quatrain, the passionate woman compares her lover with strong and everlasting objects, bringing to light and solidifying his strength and beauty. The second quatrain is about war and destruction, with references to Mars, the god of war, and fire. Still, the lover will outlast all chaos. The third and final quatrain reinforces the same ideas, but instead of dwelling on items of the past, it introduces elements of the future. The 3 quatrains work together to prove that the subject of the poem is immortal despite all calamity. The couplet brings the sonnet to a close, describing the true significance of all previous contents, that the lover is truly immortal and will forever be present in the lives of those who love him. Now for style. For diction, the tone of the poem is set by words such as powerful, sluttish, wasteful, doom, all oblivious, and enmity. These words carry heavy meanings, which weigh on the reader as the poem carries on. With these heavy words, one could say that their purpose is to provide the reader with the same impact as the deceased lover had on his passionate woman. There's also a common theme in the poem, with words marble, monuments, stone, statues, and masonry. There's a common theme of strong and long-lasting materials that the passionate woman compares her deceased lover with. Even though they are sturdy and firm substances, the woman makes sure to emphasize that their existences are fleeting and eventually come to an end. There are also instances of personification, such as with sluttish time, Mars his sword, war's quick fire, when wasteful war shall statues overturn, all oblivious enmity. And all oblivious, by the way, is forces that do not care about human emotion and do not have remorse. Therefore, they are ruthless entities. The purpose of personification in this poem is to give characters or to concepts or objects so that they can be compared to the woman's deceased lover. These instances of personification also carry a negative tone due to the adjectives used, such as sluttish and wasteful, which automatically adjust the reader's perception of each item so that, in comparison, the lover is viewed as even more amazing than he already is. There are also many examples of self-reference, such as outlive this powerful rhyme, these contents, you live in this, the living record of your memory, which is the poem. These examples of self-reference are where the idea of poetry immortalizing one's spirit comes in. Not only immortalizing the poem, but also poetry as a type of literature. It's also fitting how gilded monuments refers to memorials, and this poem acts as a memorial or tribute to the woman's deceased lover. Now, circling back to war's quick fire. Fire is described as quick, suggesting it can cause mass destruction in a very short amount of time. Yet it can never end the existence of this poem. The poem is protected against all forms of evil, and the poem protects the memory of the woman's lost lover. Now I will discuss some interesting choices that the poet had. In the first quatrain, but you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluttish time. This is interesting because unswept stone is not necessarily a vibrant sight. Perhaps its meaning is that the impact of the deceased life will be more than that of the stone that has been important for centuries. Either way, there's no correlation between brightness and decaying stone. The next is the living record of your memory against death and all oblivious enmity. This is also interesting because a living record and death oppose each other in meaning. However, it makes the audience think about a new idea. Life and death are not opposites, only birth and death are. Thus, life can continue after death, especially through this poem. Now, as for multiple meanings, in the line, so till the judgment that yourself arise. Judgment in this case refers to the day in Christianity where the dead are resurrected. So its meaning is, until you come back to life in reality, your life will continue in this poem. However, if the word judgment were read as its literal meaning, it can also be understood as, until your existence raises suspicion, you will be forever loved and remembered. This would place some pressure on the subject. This interpretation could be perceived as satirical, which in that case would break up the constant intensity of the poem at line 13. Now, in the last line, you live in this and dwell in lovers' eyes. This is where we finally get to know who is writing the poem, which is the deceased man's lover. Now, as for syntax, there is parallelism in the sentences, not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme, and nor Mars his sword nor war's quick fire shall burn the living record of your memory. These instances show the irrelevance of four seemingly unbreakable and undefeatable entities in comparison to the power of the poem and the lover's spirit. This repetition of syntax helps to uphold ideas of comparison and the deceased lover's value against all kinds of immense powers. Now, as for line breaks, the line breaks in this poem are often used to separate the subject, the deceased lover, from the items that he's being compared with. In the first quatrain, but you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluggish time, if you notice, you and the item that is being compared with, which is unswept stone besmeared with sluggish time, are separated. In the second quatrain, the living record of your memory, again, stands alone at the end when after it's being compared with all these different elements. There's also an instance in the first line where the line break acts to emphasize the next line. Not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme. Of princes is the beginning of the second line, which does not follow the pattern of the other line breaks. Following the idea that lines are separated based on their mentions of the subject, could the reader deduce that the deceased lover was a prince? We might never know. Now, as for periodic clauses, there's one periodic clause, against death and all oblivious enmity shall you pace forth. This example of a periodic clause reflects the actions of the subject, where even though disaster will strike first, at the end, the deceased lover's memory will prevail and move forward. Now, as for a cumulative clause, your praise shall still find room, even in the eyes of all posterity that wear this world out to the ending doom. This instance of a cumulative clause reflects the progression of time. The deceased lover's existence will have come before the future catastrophes of newer generations, where ending doom comes at the end of the clause. Now, together as a quatrain, the periodic and cumulative clauses sandwich the subject in the middle of them. The purpose of this could be to share the message that despite all horror and misery, the subject being stuck in the middle will still persist and rise on top. As you can see, it is in the middle of the periodic and cumulative clauses. Now, for sounds and schemes of repetition, there's an alliteration when wasteful war. This draws attention to the impact of war and its relevance in the context of this poem. Perhaps it suggests that the cause of the lover's death was war. And also for sounds, nor Mars his sword, nor war's quick fire. Mars, sword, and wars all have a similar sound, showing the connection between them all, which is violence. As you can see, Mars and wars rhymes, and that makes sense because Mars is the god of war. Now, what does this all really come down to? The poem's main idea, how love and poetry can immortalize one's spirit, reveals the true power of human emotion and charisma. When new and questionable concepts are stated with mighty conviction, just as Shakespeare has demonstrated, the impact is significantly greater than if ideas were introduced plainly. This same notion can help individuals in understanding how such large concepts, such as religion, are so widely followed and cherished. They were first introduced with gusto and grand comparisons, and those were made by whoever was introducing them, such as the speaker in this poem. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope I provided you with some more clarity as to what Sonnet 55 of Shakespeare is really all about. Thank you.